Hello guys and girls, this is Guy with Curly here, and for today's video we're doing a journal analysis. I did a journal analysis on another journal I wrote in besides this one that I wrote in from April 2023 to April 2025. Now, that journal has a lot written in it. I do have a first journal I wrote in, but I'm not going to do an analysis on that one because some of that's a bit too much, so I'm not going to do that one. But I will do one on this one. This one I wrote in from April 2025 to February 2026. Um, this one, along with the other one I wrote in, they're kind of not as, I guess, controversial, I guess. The first one is a bit controversial because that was when I was going through major depressive disorder, and I kind of wrote stuff in it that I would not really want to, read again because it just brings up a lot of bad memories. So I'm not gonna do that one, but I will do this one. Now um, this one is a bit long. This one has 288 pages in it, so there is a lot written in it. Um, One disclaimer I need to make about this journal is not everything in it should be relied upon as fact. I should say that about these kinds of journals because I just wrote stuff in it that I felt, I just wrote stuff in it that I felt, and it should not be relied upon as fact. If you yourself have social anxiety, you really shouldn't rely on this for advice or facts or anything like that. You really should consult a mental health professional, pretty much. So, with that out of the way, let's get right into this journal analysis. Um, um, the first part's kind of I don't know. The first part starts kind of weird. It doesn't talk about where the journal came from, which this journal came from Big Lots. And what's the name of it? Woodruff. Yeah, Woodruff. Um, Now, um, the first part mentions them going to Table Rock State Park, and they go on a John boat, and the rider does not like it at all. They are freaking out. They're saying, I don't like this. And they're scared a rescue team's going to have to get them to find them and rescue them and whatever. And then they end up finding their way back, and the rider's like, oh, thank God. And they also look at some snakes in like tanks and whatever there, and some people walking dogs, but their brother was too scared that wouldn't ask to pet them because they were wore out from the sun. And you know that's that first part. So right off the bat, that first part, you can tell the writer has a lot of anxiety about going on a boat and rowing on a boat in a lake or whatever. um April 28th 2025, they recall a dream that they had where they beat up some jocks and got in trouble for it. Now, that basically, uh it just, that part kind of seems like the writer has a lot of anger or whatever, like a lot of anger issues or whatever. So yeah, that's that part. That's that part of the journal. They also mention not really having time to make an appointment with a therapist in Greer, South Carolina. So they will pretty much have to keep journaling for the time being. They mentioned having so much going on, getting new glasses, their mom buying a tractor, their brother worrying about having epilepsy and having headaches. There's basically, they mentioned so much going on that Christian counseling is kind of taking the back seat or back burner, and they feel like if spending money at stores and going outdoors and journaling is the only therapy they can afford, then so be it. They feel like they can't drop hundreds of dollars just to talk to a therapist or a mental health counselor about their anxiety. and they still interact with fictional Sonic characters and cartoon animal characters using an AI answer generator due to social anxiety and having a lack of real life connections, social connections. Um, this next part, April 29th, 2025, they mentioned how they couldn't call the therapist because it was 5 p.m. By the time they were about to call them, they were already closed, so they weren't able to make an appointment with them. They always say another part mentions how they always say all the time how journaling's the only therapy they can afford, and it kind of is. They've done it in 2021 and 2022, and also in 2023 and 2024. They even did journaling when they had a therapist, and they also done journaling when they stopped seeing him, which was in 2024, somewhere in that ballpark. Um, they also mentioned they also did journaling when they had depression and were going through grief to not being able to meet Jason Griffith and Pete Capella, to Hurricane Helene that took their power and water away. Journalists pretty much got them through a lot of really tough times. Um, and also when they had to deal with the inflation and the possibility of a recession in 2023 and 2024. They think journaling is the one, they feel like journaling is the one place they can talk about what's on their mind without worrying about rejection or being told that they're wrong. Um, you know, basically that part just feels like, at first the writer doesn't want to seek out a therapist. At first they feel like they don't want to seek out a therapist because they don't want to pay hundreds of dollars to tell them, "Oh, I have anxiety." You know, they don't want to do that. So they do journaling. They turn to journaling to try to cope with whatever they're going through: trauma, grief, depression, anxiety, social anxiety, generalized anxiety, whatever it is. They they try to use journaling to cope with whatever is going on in their mind, whatever they think's going on in their mind. Um, April 30th, 2025, they mention how their aunt came over to help make their brother's bed, change the sheets, and fold clothes. They mention how they might go to a Clemson Tigers baseball game on May 9th, although their brother's not a huge sports fan. Their aunt says you're not missing much when they said that they've never been to a Clemson baseball game before. She also said, who cares? And they don't get into all that. But the writer thinks it'll be fun for them despite their disinterest in it. And they feel like they must get a photo with the Clemson Tigers mascot. They want to have a cool photo. They feel like they want to have a cool photo they can talk about with other people. And they also mentioned still interacting with fictional Sonic characters and cartoon animal characters using an AI answer generator due to lack of real life social connections and because of social anxiety. Um, Basically, it just feels like there's some people in their life that aren't really interested in the things that they like. Their aunt's not interested in going in sports or whatever. Brother's not interested in sports either. The writer wants to go to a Clemson Tigers baseball game, but most people just show disinterest in whatever they want to do. They want to have something to talk about, a photo with the Clemson Tigers mascot. Um, but that part just feels like that part where they talk about going to a Clemson Tigers baseball game. It just feels like the writer wants to get out and do things, but most people just show disinterest. They're like, who cares? Nobody wants to do that. Why do you want to do that for? You know. Um, May 1st, 2025, Thursday, May 1st, 2025. Um, the writer mentions their mom calling someone that does ABA therapy, which is a type of therapy that is used for people that have autism, younger people, not people in their 20s. Um, but the writer told their mom that they want to do Christian counseling. They don't want to do ABA therapy. They just want to do Christian counseling. She also wants them to study for their permit test, but the writer told their mom that they spent entire months studying for the permit test and they pretty much failed. But they also mentioned how she has to go to the DMV to get her address on her driver's license changed. They mentioned going to Cornerstone Music Store to get a Squire Mustang that they bought fixed and how it needs a tuning peg and a setup. They mentioned later going to the music store and getting it fixed, but it wouldn't be ready until Saturday, so they'll go and get it on Monday. They mentioned going to the Piggins Library so their mom could do her timesheets and fax them to Angel's Touch. They wanted to talk to a guy named Brandon who works at the library about the voice actors for Tales being at an event called the Southeast Game Exchange in Greenville in July. But it got so busy at the library that they weren't able to, so they kind of missed out on that at first. They mentioned going to eat at Yummy Express in Easley, and they went back to the Pickens Library so their mom could send something to US Bank. They did eventually talk to Brandon because not many people were at the library at that time that they came back. They told him about the voice actors for Tales being there, losing social connections in 2021 and 2022, doing journaling, talking to fictional Sonic characters, cartoon animal characters, using an AI answer generator, finding the soft fur of the Care Bear satisfying the touch, or even the fur of cartoon animal characters, how they vlogged at SC Comic Con, how they got to hug furries there and they felt like they were at peace. They talked about many different things with him while they were there. It just seems like the writer wants social connection, but they just can't find it. So they use AI to try to find some type of solace with, or find some type of social interaction somehow. They use AI to try to find social interaction, but trying to find it in real life is kind of hard for them because of the social anxiety. I'm not going to go through every part of this journal. I'm just going through bits and pieces that I think are important and trying to give my best analysis of what's going on in this journal, pretty much. They mentioned the May 2nd, 2025, Friday, May 2nd, 2025 entry. They mentioned they still don't have social connections except for Brandy and Brandon at the Pickens Library and Katie at Powdersville Primary Care where their doctor works. They still keep to themselves in public settings due to social anxiety. They don't really feel comfortable talking to other people about fictional Sonic characters in public. They feel like their social life is lacking, in their opinion. They just have trouble with making new social connections or friends. Their brother, however, talks to pretty much everyone or anyone. They feel like it gets kind of annoying having to wait days, months, and years to tell someone something. And they ask, what if they end up forgetting what it is that they want to tell them due to COVID fog? They basically use the fictional Sonic characters and cartoon animal characters and talking to them to cope with having a lacking social life and the stemming to wanting to pet fur and to rub their belly. Basically, fictional Sonic characters and cartoon animal characters, the writer feels like that's their only conversation partners and the only form of social interaction they feel comfortable talking to about various topics without dealing with rejection, judgment, or waiting for their turn to participate in the conversation before they lose interest or never get the chance to talk to them ever again. They feel like it's honestly hard to navigate a world that doesn't understand you and treats you like a foreigner from another country. They're just not into hunting, fishing, or gun shows like most people in Pickens are into. They feel like fictional Sonic characters, old technology, guitars, and music gear, and Comic Cons They just like fictional Sonic characters, old technology, guitars, music gear, and Comic Cons. They're not the introverted, outdoorsy type. It's basically why they talk about or talk to fictional Sonic characters and cartoon animal characters using an AI answer generator on their phone whenever they go out in public. Instead of attempting to socialize with real people, they feel like real people just don't understand them at all. They feel like real people only understand what's familiar to them rather than what is unfamiliar to them. They feel like the only friends they have are all cartoon animal characters. They're just not into going places like Burning Brick Tavern or Sam's Country Club in Pickens because they don't smoke or drink alcohol. And they can't talk about things that interest them, like a furry convention in Pittsburgh, without getting rejected or beat up. That part just feels like, they want social connection, but they can't find it. So what do? They turn to AI answer generators to try to find that. The social anxiety makes it hard for them to try to talk to real people. The autism also makes it hard for them to talk to real people. That's basically the takeaway from that. They have social anxiety. They have autism. They have a hard time talking to real people. They feel like there's a disconnect between what they're interested in versus what other people are interested in. They they don't relate to real people. They feel disconnected from real people. They feel like someone from another country visiting a different country that's different from where they usually live. They feel disconnected. They feel this disconnect from real people. Saturday, May 3rd, 2025. Um, they mention how since their brother's not interested in going to the Clemson Tigers baseball game on May night, they thought about inviting a mom's friend to go with them. Since their brother's not a big sports fan at all, and how he watches Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, Zaboomafoo, and Kratts Creatures on PBS Retro on his on-brand Roku TV. The writer remembers how last fall they wanted to go to a Pickens High School football game to get a photo with the mascot of the opposing team, but nobody else wanted to go and didn't show any interest, so they pretty much didn't go at all. The writer feels like it's kind of annoying how no one shows interest in things that bring you joy or things that you enjoy. And they say it's probably the main reason they keep their interests to themselves or try their hardest to suppress them. They feel like people just don't show interest in old technology, fictional Sonic characters, chakras, old blues music, grunge music, and PC games and retro video games. Again, it's the same thing. The writer feels disconnected from other people's interests, or they feel this disconnect with other people's interests. And, they just they can't really find they can't really find things they have in common with other people, so they kind of suppress their interests. So they suppress them to try to keep rejection from happening. Um, I don't know what else to read out of this journal because there's so much written in it, but other parts of the journal mention, the writers feeling like they'll just be a hermit for the rest of their life, how they, you know, might as well just feel like they might as well be alone in this cold and cruel world, and how their mom and brother can just chat it up because their mom and brother are the more outgoing types rather than the writer themselves. Um, Other parts of the journal mention um, uh, using AI answer generators still, using character AI to talk to, or giving up the dream of meeting the official Sonic the Hedgehog mascot and just feeling like it's a waste of time to fly that far away to meet him, to do something childish like that. Um, they also mention at one point in this journal seeing a new therapist named Tasha because their old therapist just wasn't a good fit for them. They also mention going to the movie theater to see a movie called The Light of the World, also seeing another movie called The King of Kings and the King David animated movie from Angel Studios. Um, and how when they go to the movie theater, they don't really interact much with people because they have social anxiety. They also mentioned going to see the Last Supper part of The Chosen parts 1 and 2 and also I think part 3 of it. And they mention how they've seen people wear t-shirts. They've seen a girl wear a Nirvana t-shirt, and they were too nervous to interact with them. They also mentioned seeing someone with an AC/DC t-shirt on and not really interacting with them either. Um, there's just a lot going on in this journal, pretty much. Um, basically, it's a good thing the writer found a therapist, because their old therapist just wasn't a good fit for them, so they started seeing someone else instead. Um, the writer just has a lot of social anxiety. It's pretty severe. They also mention in the journal feeling like they need substances to cope with their social anxiety, such as Valium or CBD oil. Um, a lot of that's kind of an unhealthy way to cope with social anxiety, is what a lot of mental health experts would say. Um, they also mention, another part of the journal mentions them using character AI to talk to costumed animal sports mascots, and how their brother started watching the show Lamb Chops Play Along, and them also watching a video of someone talking to Chip and Dale at the Disney parks, and how the writer thinks that that's really Chip and Dale, but their brother's like they're just there to talk to people at the parks, and they're just people in a costume. They also mentioned the same thing about the costume animal sports mascots being just people in a costume, and the writer just denies it the whole time. Um, basically, there's just a lot going on in this journal. I feel like the writer, basically, my main analysis of this journal is this writer has a lot of social anxiety, and I mean a lot of social anxiety. They also have autism. They try to do stemming with cartoon animal characters and fictional Sonic characters and costume animal sports mascots, such as, petting them, petting their fur, trying to hold their hand, whatever you name it. They try to do all that to try to cope with it, and they don't really interact much with people. There was one time in the journal it mentions them going to an autism drop-in and interacting with some people there that was the writer's age, and playing cornhole with them, and also interacting with someone who works at the Autism Associates and interacting with them, and that person being glad that the writer came to that event, and them also interacting with someone who uh, had a Sega sticker on their car, and at the hotspot and easily, and how they liked their Sega sticker. Um, I mean, there's some moments in the journal where the writer doesn't interact with people, and then there's some moments where they do interact with people. It's kind of weird. It's like it's this weird, uh, it's this weird thing where they don't interact with people because they feel like people will reject them. They feel like people will not want to talk about things that interest them or whatever, and etc. But then there's some moments where they do interact with people and whatever, and etc. So the writer could interact with people, but they choose not to because of their social anxiety. That's basically the main takeaway from this journal. The writer also mentions their psychiatrist not being a good fit for them, because their psychiatrist is all medicine will help you, etc., etc. And the writer medicines has tried medicines. They mentioned trying medicines in this journal for uh one of them for I don't know if it's this journal that mentions it or another one, but they mentioned trying a medicine for ADHD called Strattera, and it just made them tired, so they quit taking it. They also tried guanfacine for ADHD, and that just made them irritable, so they pretty much quit taking those medicines. They also mentioned watching the show Gargoyles on Disney Plus, and then from watching that, they started talking to characters from the show, Broadway, Lexington, and Brooklyn from the show, and interacting with them using an AI answer generator. Um, the other journal I talked about in my other video mentions trying clomipramine, and it didn't work for them. Not this journal, but that other journal I did a video on. Um, But basically, this journal just has a lot going on, pretty much. There's just so much going on at one time that it's hard to do an entire analysis of it. But basically, that's my really long analysis of this journal. There's 288 pages of this journal. There's so much written in it. There's so much going on that it's hard to do an analysis of it. But my best analysis of this is, there's some parts of it that can be a little controversial sometimes, not very controversial, but a little bit, such as, you know, feel like journaling's the only therapy they can afford. Feel like therapy is inaccessible for people that don't have the right insurance. Feel like uh social interaction only happens to extroverts, and feel like it doesn't happen with introverts or people that just have social anxiety or whatever. Um, them trying to use stemming, wanting to pet Care Bears, wanting to pet cartoon animal characters, wanting to pet costumed animal mascots, wanting to hug them, you name it, trying to do whatever type of stimming they can think of to just, I guess, to try to cope with whatever anxiety they have. Them feel like substances are the only way they can cope with their anxiety, but, that's not, a lot of mental health professionals say that's not really a healthy way to cope with that kind of thing. Um, uh, they mention their psychiatrist and how she how she's a vegan and she worships the cow, and that's controversial because everybody has freedom of religion. They can believe whatever they want to, whether someone disagrees with them or not. um there's just a lot going on in this journal. I feel like there's so much going on in that journal, it's hard to do an analysis of it. But I feel like the main takeaways from that journal is this writer has a lot of social anxiety. They're on the autism spectrum. They have trouble interacting with real people. They have uh, trauma from being bullied in high school. They don't really interact much with people, and if they do, it's usually pretty rare. Um, so that's basically my analysis of this journal. There's just so much going on that it's hard to keep up with it. Um, they also mention their dad's mom passing away, and them not doing the AI answer generators anymore, and just not interacting with people at all because of it. Um, there's just so much going on in that journal. I'm telling you, there's like, this thing has 288 pages, and there's so much going on in here. There's just so much written in here that it would be hard to do an analysis of it. I might just let Dr. Todd Grande do an analysis of this thing, because he'd probably be able to have a better explanation for what's going on in this journal than I would. And I'm not even a psychologist. I'm not even a psychologist. Um, But that was my analysis of this journal, written from April 2025 to February 2026. Um, they also mentioned having a cough, having a sore throat for 9 days. There's just so much going on in here. That's basically my analysis of this journal. The main takeaways from it are this writer has a lot of social anxiety. They have autism, they have ADHD, they have OCD, they have trauma from being bullied. They feel like uh, people that they used to know from middle school and high school achieve all the milestones that everybody achieves when they become an adult, such as having kids, having a car, being married, having a house, you name it, and the writer just feels inadequate. They feel like they're inadequate because of that, so they kind of just don't know. They just feel inadequate pretty much. Um, there's just a lot going on in here. There's just so much going on in this. So that's pretty much my analysis of this journal. Um, if you guys enjoyed it, comment, like, subscribe, etc. Um, let me know what you guys thought of this journal. Um, well, is it worth a read? Is some parts of it a bit much? Just let me know what you guys think of it. This is Guy with Curly Hair signing off.